Geoverse Part 2 To Love is Human by GeodesicDragon. Chapter 4 The Good Dr. Soru. John and I stood in front of the warehouse. It was a large building with boards over several windows and several solar panels and wind turbines on the roof. "Are you sure this is the right place?" I asked, looking around with a feeling of unease. John nodded. "Yeah, this is the address he gave me," he replied. I took a deep breath and started walking towards the door. "Best not to keep him waiting, then," I said. The door opened with a high-pitched squealing noise, revealing a set of stairs which we began descending. We came to another door made of iron, with a buzzer nearby. John hesitated for a moment before pressing it. "Who's there?" a voice said. John replied. "My name's John Adams. We spoke on the phone yesterday." There was a series of clattering noises, followed by rustling. Adams. Ah, yes. You and your friends are here about my job offer. Come on in." The door unlocked with a loud click, and John pushed it open. We entered the laboratory, our eyes widening at the many pieces of equipment scattered around. Dr. Soru was standing at a table nearby. He was wearing a long white lab coat over top, some casual clothes, a shirt advertising the game Halo, and a pair of blue jeans. His doctorate in mechanical engineering hung in a frame on the wall behind him. He was paying close attention to a device he was constructing using an adjustable wrench and what appeared to be a spoon. His brown curly hair was parted down the center by a rubber strap that held his goggles to his head, and he had a wide grin on his face. Upon seeing us, Soru put down the wrench and spoon and held out his hand. We each shook it. "Ah, good to see you," he said gleefully. "I'm glad to see you guys are here, bright and early. You have no idea how hard it is to find victims who are so eager to help me." John and I looked at each other nervously as Soru clapped a hand to his forehead. "I'm sorry," he said with a weak chuckle. "Did I say victims? I meant assistants. I always get those two confused." John and I laughed half-heartedly. An awkward silence descended upon the room. Eventually, Soru clapped his hands together. "Ah, right. Now that the pleasantries are out of the way, perhaps you'd like to know what the job involves?" John and I nodded, neither of us willing to speak. "I just need a couple of laborers to carry equipment. I will pay you handsomely for your help." "How much?" I asked, my voice dry and throaty. "I may not look it," replied Soru, "but I am wealthy. I'll pay each of you 17 pounds an hour for helping me out." John and I did a double take. 17 quid an hour?" John gasped. "Count me in." "Me too," I said happily. "For that kind of money I'll do anything." I hesitated for a moment. "Within reason," I added quickly. Soru laughed and grasped John and I by the shoulders. "Welcome aboard, then," he said. "This could be the start of a wonderful friendship." "If you don't mind me asking, Doc," I said hesitantly, "what are you working on here?" Soru looked around the laboratory as if expecting someone to be listening in. He pulled John and I close and began whispering. "What are we working on?" he said. "Well, you won't believe me if I told you, but what the hell, I'll tell ya anyway." "Okay." The worry on John's face was all too obvious. "What if I told you that there are other worlds?" Soru said, his eyes full of wonder. "Other universes, aside from the one we live in, where creatures, other than humans, have evolved to a point of sentience and are the planet's dominant species." John and I looked at each other with raised eyebrows. "It just so happens," Soru continued, "that I have found one such universe, and get this, it's inhabited by ponies." John and I spluttered. Soru glared at us. Yeah, he said bitterly. "Laugh all you want, but I'm serious. These ponies fly, build their own equipment and structures, even talk. They speak the same language we're speaking right now." I rubbed the back of my head with my hand. "That's real freaky, Doc," I said flatly. Soru grumbled. "Because I believe you." Sorrow gasped. "You do?" he said before narrowing his eyes. "You're not pulling my leg, are you?" No, I said, shaking my head. "Because, well—" I hesitated for a moment before Sorrow sighed and threw his hands into the air exasperatedly. "Spit it out, boy!" he shouted. "I've been to the world you describe," I said. "I've seen the ponies you speak of." Sorrow began spluttering, unable to string a complete sentence together. He walked over to his desk and started raking through a vast pile of paper. Grabbing a few pieces, he came back to me, thrusting the paper into my hands. "You've seen these ponies," he said, jabbing the paper with a finger. "These ponies right here." I looked down at the pile of paper and gasped. There were drawings and photos of various ponies. "How did you get these?" I said, unable to contain my glee. "I've been working on a device which creates a gateway to other worlds, a portal, if you will," Sorrow said. "That's plausible," I replied. "But these photos and drawings are, well, they're perfect." "I've managed to get a few successful portals up and running," Sorrow explained, "but they've only lasted for a few seconds at a time, so I sent in these flying robotic cameras to collect data, and they report back to me once their memory banks are full." He pointed to a nearby workbench, upon which sat one of the cameras he was referring to. It looked like a bird, but with a camera instead of a beak. "I've got to disguise them so I don't freak out the natives," Sorrow said with a chuckle. I continued looking through the photos and drawings. I recognized several of the ponies depicted in them. I saw Big Macintosh, Lyra, Derpy Hooves, Maya Mare, the Cutie Mark Crusaders, as well as several others whom I met at my welcome party. I got to the last picture in the pile and looked at it. I gasped and covered my hand with my mouth. "What is it?" John asked. I showed him the picture, doing my best to fight the tears forming in my eyes. "It's Twilight." The emotion suddenly became too much to handle as I dropped to my knees and began sobbing, clutching the photo to my chest.